Footy is supposed to be a game of discipline. 90 minutes of following the rules, listening to the gaffer, and keeping your cool while millions of people watch your every single move. The clubs want robots. The sponsors want role models. But every now and then, the mask slips just a teeny bit. Sometimes the pressure doesn't just create diamonds, but it creates monsters. We're talking about the shadow side of the pitch, where the beautiful game turns into a street fight, where a rejected pass turns into a civil war, where a defender's tackle earns them a trip to the dentist. Today, we're looking at the players who didn't just break rules, but they lost their entire heads, from kung fu kicks in South London to the cannibal of Anfield. We're diving into the most legendary crash-outs in footy history. This isn't about tactics, this video won't have anything to do with trophies, but it's about what happens when the professional becomes a problem. Eric Cantona kung fu kick. On January 25th, 1995, it was just another midweek shift at Selhurst Park, Man United versus Crystal Palace. But for Eric Cantona, this wasn't just a game, it was a personal war. See, Cantona was the blueprint at the time. He had that collar-up swagger, moving player with an ego so big it had its own postcode. When you saw him walk out of the tunnel, you knew it was going to be a long day for any defender. And this was prime Eric, peak, the king. The lore starts with Richard Shaw. All game, Shaw's in Cantona's ear, tugging his jersey, giving him that low-key competitive banter that stays on the pitch most of the time. But in the second half, Cantona's fuse finds boots right in front of the ref. Red card, easy call. Up until this point, it's just a regular Cantona crash out. He's heated, but he's walking it off, trying to keep his cool. Nothing we haven't seen before. That is until he passes the boards and hears a voice from the stands. A Palace fan named Matthew Simmons leans over and allegedly began screaming racial abuse, thinking he's safe behind the barrier. Psych! He was wrong. Cantona's face shifts instantly. The cool is gone. He doesn't just look at the fan, he sprints. What follows is a scene you couldn't script if you tried. Cantona launches himself into the air, feet first, and delivers a full throttle kung fu kick directly at the fan's chest. And before the fan could even blink, Cantona's back on his feet, throwing hands like it's a street fight before any of his teammates came to pull him away. The whole of Selhurst Park, stunned. Glitch in the Matrix at the time. But the fallout was just as heavy as the kick. He was banned for 9 months, no footy, out of the game. And he was fined 20,000 euros, roughly 23,000 euros today. And he was given an international death sentence when he was drawn again. But if you thought an apology was coming, you do not know Cantona. In his first press conference back, he sat in front of the world's media, took a little sip of water, and dropped the most cryptic bar in football history.
When the seagulls follow the trawler, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you.
He got up, walked out, and left everyone wondering, is he a philosopher or is this nigga lost? Either way, the legend was stamped. Luis Suárez, vampire on multiple occasions. Biting another human once is a mental health day away from a straitjacket, but making it your signature move, that's a whole nother level of villainy. Enter Luis Suárez. Before he was a Liverpool legend or a Barca icon, he was a problem in the Netherlands. The date, 2010, Ajax versus PSV. In the middle of a standard Eredivisie scuffle, Suárez decides he's done talking, takes a literal chunk out of Otman Bakal's shoulder. 7-match ban, and was given the new nickname, the Cannibal of Ajax. This is the first high-profile glitch that marks Suárez as the most aggressively unpredictable player in the game. And by the time he got to Anfield, Suárez was a certified bagsman. He was arguably the best player in the world not named Messi or Ronaldo. But that hunger, literally did not go away. Fast forward to 2013, Liverpool versus Chelsea, one of the most intense high-stakes games in English footy throughout the season. Suárez is tangled up in the box with Ivanović, and out of nowhere, turns and sinks his teeth into Ivanovic's arm. He copped a 10-match ban, the longest for an on-field incident in Premier League history at the time, which checks out. Now, let's keep in mind, this guy already had a reputation for being a controversial genius. Everyone remembers the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, where he used his hands like a goalie to stop a certain Ghana goal, and then he was just laughing as they missed a penalty. He was already a villain, but at the 2014 World Cup, he decided to complete the entire trilogy. The stage was Uruguay versus Italy. The whole world is watching, and Suárez finds himself shoulder to shoulder with Giorgio Chiellini. And out of a scene out of a National Geographic show, he strikes again, takes a bite out of the Italian's shoulder, and then had the audacity to sit on the floor, clutching his teeth like he was the victim. Like Chiellini's shoulder hurt his teeth too much or something. Once again, he was given a 9-match international ban and a 4-month ban from all football activities. I can't think of any other player in history with this type of stat sheet when it comes to this. It's like Gretchen from Baddies when she dropped the N-word and then took a bite out of Jayla, except Suárez went 3 for 3 on the world's biggest stage. He didn't just lose his head, he made sure he was the most infamous biter in the sport's history.
Big Ibra versus Tyrone Mings.
If we're team, Man United versus Bournemouth. Just another day at Old Trafford, right? Wrong. This was a heavyweight title fight disguised as a football match. The lore starts with the classic center forward versus center back battle. Zlatan Ibrahimović versus Tyrone Mings. All game, they're grappling, shoveling, and testing each other's chin for the first 40 minutes. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, but right before halftime, the spark hit the gas. Zlatan and Wayne Rooney got tangled up and hit the deck. And as they're laying there, Mings decides to take a shortcut, runs straight through the pile and casually plants his studs into the side of Zlatan's head while sprinting by. Mings claims it was an accident, just a hurdle gone wrong, but every United fan saw it for exactly what it was, a cowardly, calculated stomp on a defenseless player. Now, if you know anything about Ibra, you know he's not a rat. He don't call the police, he doesn't go to the ref crying. Zlatan Ibrahimović? More like Zlatan Ibra debt setter. Less than 2 minutes later, a corner swung into the Bournemouth box. Zlatan rises for the header like a god, but his eyes were not on the ball. He's tracking Mings like GPS coordinates, and as they meet in the air, Zlatan delivers a clinical, vicious elbow straight to Mings' head. This was the Wild West, pre-VAR days. The referee, Kevin Friend, completely blinked. He missed the stamp, he missed the elbow. He let play just go on. But I guess even funnier, Andrew Sermon, the Bournemouth captain, was so gassed up seeing his teammate get shouldered that he ran over and gave Zlatan a little shove to be like, what are you doing? The result? The ref gave Sermon a second yellow card, and he was literally the calmest man on the pitch, but he was the only one who saw red, because the ref had a total brain fade and forgot who he had already booked. But the lore was just cemented in the post-game interview. Zlatan didn't deny it, he made it sound like Mings attacked his elbow with his face. Zlatan said,
"Listen, you have the TV, you can see the images and whatever. In my situation, I jump up, I jump high. Same time, I protect myself, and unlucky he jumps into me, and he jumps into my elbow. So."
And then he dropped the ultimate Zlatan threat to the press. "If I wanted to kick you in the head, I'd kick you in the head and put you to sleep. That's the only thing I can say." And the FA had to hop in and play detective, and they looked at all the tapes, and they handed Mings a 5-match ban for the stamp, and gave Zlatan a 3-match ban for his retributional elbow. Zlatan didn't just go into pure head loss, he made sure the books were balanced before the whistle blew.
Joey Barton's final day Rampage in 2012.
May 13th, 2012 was one of the most stressful days in Premier League history. Man City needed a win to snatch their first title from United, and QPR needed just a result to survive relegation. The stakes could not be higher, but in the 54th minute, with the game tied 1-1, Joey Barton decided that it was time to play main character. It starts off with an off-the-ball tangle with Carlos Tevez. Barton, being Joey Barton, loses his entire head loss begins, and throws a deliberate elbow straight into Tevez's throat. The ref misses it, but the linesman is instantly waving his flag, tells the ref wagwan, no worries, quick red card. Most players would just walk off in shame, right? Joey Barton? Nah. He looked at that red card and thought, if I'm going down, I'm taking the whole Etihad with me. What followed was 60 seconds of pure, unadulterated chaos. Barton evolved into the final boss mode. We're talking Madara Uchiha during the Great Shinobi War. He knew his season was done, so he thought QPR was headed for the championship, so he had a scorched earth mission. As he's walking off, he passes Sergio Aguero, and without breaking stride, throws a knee into the back of Aguero's leg. Aguero drops to the turf like he's been sniped. Immediately, the city captain, Vincent Kompany, runs over like, "Ayo, Joey, what the fuck? Wagwan." Barton was the player on him, proper mad ting. Doesn't back down. So he tries to headbutt Kompany right there in front of everyone. A massive scuffle breaks out, and just to add more spice to the pot, Mario Balotelli, who wasn't even playing, he was on the bench at the time, sprints onto the pitch trying to get a piece of Barton. It took half of the QPR squad just to restrain Barton from turning the pitch into the UFC octagon. The irony though, Man City would go on to win the game with that iconic Aguero goal that was assisted by Mario Balotelli of all people to win the league. Meanwhile, QPR miraculously stayed up because of results elsewhere in the league. But the lore of this crash out lived on Twitter. Barton later admitted that this wasn't just a blind rage, it was a strategic gamble. He figured if he could provoke a City star like Kompany or Balotelli into hitting him back, they'd get another red too, and then the game would even out a little more. But the price of his war? Joey Barton got hit with a little 12-match ban, the longest in Premier League history for an on-field behavior at the time. He was fined 6 weeks of wages, which was roughly 4,200 euros, and he was so unplayable in England that QPR had to ship him off on loan to Marseille just to get him out the country. Joey Barton didn't just lose his mind, he tried to burn the league down on his way out.
Newcastle teammates Lee Bowyer versus Kieron Dyer.
And if we're going to talk about the beautiful game turning ugly, we have to talk about April 2nd, 2005. Newcastle versus Aston Villa at St. James's Park. So at St. James's Park, Newcastle were getting cooked. They were down 3-0. They were already playing with 10 men after Steven Taylor pulled the most banter handball in history. He literally tried to convince the ref he's been shot in the chest to hide a handball. It was the comedy show. But the atmosphere was not funny. It was toxic. The players were so frustrated with each other and the fans were fuming. In the 82nd minute, the internal fuse finally blew. The fight didn't start over a tackle or a bad ref call. It started over a rejected pass. Lee Bowyer had been chirping at Kieron Dyer for minutes, moaning about not getting the ball. And finally, Bowyer screams, "You never passed to me!" And Dyer, fed up with all the noise, drops the ultimate violation. "The reason I don't pass to you is because you're fucking rubbish." Instantly, Bowyer saw red. He sprinted 20 yards across the pitch, not at an opponent, but at his own teammate, and started swinging like it was WrestleMania. Dyer was not just about to take it, so obviously he retaliated. And suddenly you're watching a hockey fight on a grass pitch. Bowyer was so possessed, he literally ripped Dyer's jersey clean down the middle. The most embarrassing thing, it wasn't even a Newcastle player that came to break it up. It was Aston Villa's Gareth Barry, who had to step in and play peacemaker, while the two of them were still trying to kick each other through his legs. Referee Barry Knight had no choice, walked over and had to send them both off. In a matter of seconds, Newcastle went from 10 men to 8 men, while they were actually in possession of the ball. As they walked off to a chorus of boos from their own supporters, the lore says the fight almost restarted in the dressing room. Alan Shearer, the club legend, had to step in like a disappointed father and tell them that they were a disgrace to the Newcastle shirt. The fallout? Generational. The public shame that followed was insane. Both players were forced to stand in front of the media like schoolboys and apologize. Look at each other like, say sorry, say sorry. Newcastle hit Bowyer with a 6-week wage fine, which came up to around 250,000 euros, and Dyer escaped the entire club fine because Bowyer was seen as the aggressor. And Bowyer was in so much hot water that even the police got involved. This went beyond football, and the police actually charged Bowyer with threatening behavior, landing him an extra €600 fine in court. And Bowyer was given a 7-match ban, while Dyer got a 3-match ban. And the crazy ending? They actually made peace and played together again later at West Ham. Dyer later summed it up perfectly. "We were just two hotheads that lost it." The ultimate teammate crash out.
Paolo Di Canio versus Ref.
September 26, 1998, Sheffield Wednesday was playing Arsenal at Highbury. Now you gotta understand the proper vibes at the time. Arsenal was the invincible squad in waiting. They were physical, they were scary, and they were led by the enforcer himself, Martin Kieron. On the other side, Paolo Di Canio, mercurial, Italian, and famously short-fused. He was the definition of a loose cannon. The drama started with a standard tussle between Jim Nagelton and Patrick Vieira. Di Canio, being the talisman, felt the need to do his big one, so he swoops in to protect his teammate, but Martin was not having it. He steps in and gives Di Canio a shove to back his teammate up, and a multiplayer scuffle breaks out. It's heated, but nothing we haven't seen before, some Adama Traore, Marc Cucurella type stuff. But then Di Canio completely loses the plot, and against the run of what's going on, he joins the scuffle and aims a kick at Martin Kieron. The ref, Paul Alcock, sees the violence and obviously can't hesitate, pulls out a red, and Di Canio is off. And he went from 0 to 100 real quick. Instead of walking off, he turns back to the ref, places 2 hands on Alcock's chest, and gives him a firm shove. See, now this is where it turns into straight up comedy. The ref didn't just fall, he lost his balance, did that little awkward slow motion back pedal, staggering for like 5 meters before he finally landed on his ass. And it was a pure slapstick. The delay between the push and the actual fall was so long it felt like a cartoon. Everyone just stood there confused. For one, the fall was fucking hilarious. And for two, Di Canio was already red carded, so everyone was thinking, what now? Do you give him the second red? Di Canio had to be escorted off, and the whole walk to the tunnel, he was screaming at the Arsenal bench and the crowd. He knew his time in Sheffield was dead. And he was right. Sheffield Wednesday wanted to wash their hands of him immediately, so they shipped him off to West Ham, but only after the FA handed him an 11-match ban, the longest for a non-drug related incident in football history at that point. Di Canio didn't just push a ref, he created a viral moment before viral was even a thing. And that is the list, from Cantona's Kung Fu kick to Canio's shove, and Suárez's hunger to Joey Barton's final boss mode. All of these moments are etched into the shadows of football history, because they remind us that the game isn't just about tactics and trophies, it's about the mental battle. When the pressure gets high, some players become legends, and others just go into pure Hall of Fame mind loss. Who's your winner for the biggest crash out? Did I miss any? Drop them all in the comments below and hit the sub, and I will see you here in the next one. Thank you so much for watching this video.